Good afternoon and good morning to those tuning in from the US. Thank you for joining our panel on the topic of relaunching your loyalty program for a next-gen customer experience. I'm Lisa Andreu, Acxiom Strategic Growth Director, and today I'm joined by Sheila Power, VP UK and North America at Antavo, Michelle Fitzpatrick, Retail and Consumer Brand Strategy Consultant at Acxiom, and Dean Landsman, Head of Data at MullenLowe Profero. Consumer shopping and buying behaviour in the retail sector has changed beyond recognition since the start of the pandemic, and organisations have really had to look at the buyer journey and the ways in which they build customer loyalty in order to reach the expectations and the changing expectations of the consumer. Focusing on Europe and the US, today's panel will discuss both the differences and similarities between the retail and loyalty sectors in these regions. And the aim of this panel is to provide insight and recommendations for not only those businesses who are yet to launch a program, but also those that have existing loyalty programs, but perhaps don't feel like they're truly realizing the value yet. So you should leave armed with some key actions and considerations to think about when planning or optimizing your loyalty program. So in terms of structure for the next hour, before I formally introduce you to the panel, I thought we could start with a quick poll to kick things off. A bit of housekeeping as well. The Q&A function will be open throughout the session where you can submit any questions for our live Q&A, and we'll have about 10 minutes for the Q&A. So if we aren't able to get to your question, we'll make sure we follow up with you directly after. So we're going to start with the poll. Let me see if I can load this. Sorry, Hannah, are you able to share the poll for me? It's not coming up on my screen. Ah, perfect. Thank you very much. So there are 4 options, A through to D. Please select any and all that apply, and please cast your votes now. Hannah, have we had enough completions? Are we able to share the poll yet?
Nope, we will give everyone just a couple more seconds here.
Perfect, thank you.
Build up the suspense.
I can't wait to see the answer.
Perfect, that's great. So it looks like the majority of you have selected option B, which is, so what is your main priority over the coming year? Fostering brand loyalty in existing and lapsed customers. So perhaps you're more interested in kind of less about acquisition and more about re-engaging and perhaps delighting your existing customers with either a revamped or a new loyalty scheme with new initiatives. So that's really useful for our panelists to know for the content moving forward. But it also looks like there's an equal split between A and C as well. So a bit of acquisition and then also understanding more about customer behavior and how that's maybe changed over the past year. So great, we can now move into, if we want to close the poll, now move into the introductions to our panelists. So Michelle, I'm going to hand across to you now to introduce yourself and Acxiom.
Well, great. Thanks, Lisa. And thanks, everybody, for joining us today. In my role at Acxiom, I work in an advisory capacity to help our clients understand their customers and improve their experiences in ways that build loyalty and drive business impact. And let's face it, happy customers make great business. But we all know that it takes great experiences to make customers happy. And today, with more data, devices, technology, regulations, and higher consumer expectations for convenience, there are more opportunities for brands to get it right, but also more challenges. Now, Acxiom at its core is a customer intelligence company, and we enable better customer experiences for major brands in the retail sector and many other sectors. And we do this through the ethical use of data and technology. We help brands design and deliver compelling and personalized marketing and brand experiences by combining data, analytics, identity management, MarTech and AdTech solutions, and we refer to this as MadTech, along with data ethics and ideas to help create the customer intelligence foundation for building a customer-centric business and a data-central nervous system that allows brands to treat people, as they'd expect to be treated. And I'm delighted to be part of this panel today with Sheila and Dean.
Thank you, Michelle. And now, Dean.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dean Landman. I'm head of data at MullenLowe Profero. We are a global customer experience agency. As an agency, we have to believe in something. We believe that customer experiences really need challenging for today's consumer. We try and solve this by combining everything that we have within our data armory, our brand strategic thinking, our technologies, and really importantly, our digital first creativity. And then if we get all of that right, that hopefully leads to the creation of distinctive and connected experiences across all of our digital channels we're all familiar with, across loyalty and across CRM. And ultimately, hopefully, that leads to driving value. And when we talk about driving value, we're talking about driving value not only for the customer, of course, but for the business. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. And finally, Sheila.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sheila Power, VP of the UK and North America for Antavo. Delighted to be here today. Antavo is a pure play, kind of no-code loyalty platform. We work primarily with omnichannel retailers and brands to help deliver modern loyalty experiences to your customers. So really wanting to have the best loyalty technology in the market to kind of bring to life and make real the great strategies and concepts that the likes of Dean and Michelle come up with the great context and insights into customers. We're a global business in the UK, across Europe and out in Asia Pacific, and with some great clients in our roster who we work with, such as Brewdog, BMW, Benefit Cosmetics, and many others.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sheila. Right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so we can see everyone for the panel. Bear with me one moment. So we're going to start off with the questions. So I'm going to pose this to Michelle first. How has consumer behaviour and loyalty changed over the past 12 months?
It's a great question, Lisa. And you know, as we all know, consumer behaviors and preferences changed significantly last year. I think it's been estimated that 80 to 90% of people changed where they shop, how they buy, and what they buy. You know, think more digital and mobile, more essentials and less luxury, less loyalty, and more convenience. And we're seeing significant shifts now that the pandemic recovery is in full swing. Bottom line, I think we won't return to pre-pandemic behaviors. We'll also not arrive at a new normal. There's no fixed destination we'll get to. I predict that we'll continue to see significant changes for the next few years, which makes things a bit challenging for us as marketers. These changes mean new buying patterns, new signals, and less predictability into what works and what doesn't. One thing I think that is really interesting to note is that in 2020, we saw approximately 10 years of digital transformation in 10 months. And this is a massive shift. That said, e-commerce represented only about 14% of US retail sales pre-pandemic and 21% of sales in the UK. And while e-commerce grew in 2020, we're likely to settle in at about 20% of US retail sales and 28% of UK retail sales occurring via e-commerce in 2021. So the digital transformation we're undergoing right now is really about the omni-channel experience. And I think many loyalty programs have some work to do to catch up with the consumer's desires. And another thing I'm paying really close attention to is the pandemic impact on different generational cohorts. You know, boomers were not really impacted financially, so their behaviors didn't really change. Millennials and Gen Z, on the other hand, saw major impacts financially and professionally, and their behaviors changed accordingly. And lastly, I think we really need to look very closely at how women were impacted significantly and differently than men in the US and the UK and other markets around the world. More than 5 million women in the US left the workforce in April 2020 alone. And we're at the lowest participation by women in the US workforce since the late 80s. And in the UK, we're seeing similar trends, with an estimate that we probably won't return to pre-pandemic gender parity in the workforce in the UK until the year 2030. Now, given that women influence 70 to 80% of the buying decisions across all categories of goods, this is definitely something we need to pay attention to as an industry.
Yes, absolutely. Some quite shocking facts there and stats there. Sheila, would you like to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, obviously all of that kind of information and context that we're seeing in the retail and kind of economic landscape, and filtering that down into what we're seeing at Antavo from more of a kind of focused loyalty perspective. You know, I guess it's two edges to the sword, isn't there? You know, we're seeing a lot of people come to us seeing it as a great opportunity, that increase in digital customers, that they've acquired a new base that they weren't seeing before. I think, you know, to add to one of the stats we saw was in the first 12 weeks alone of COVID, the online peaked up at 33% from a base of about 20. So, you know, those kind of drastic changes, and suddenly you've got this new pool of customers that are maybe slightly different than the ones you're used to seeing on your digital channels, and businesses wanting to try and see how can we speak to them, how can we engage them and understand them more. But I think whilst those numbers are high and that peak's big, that still leaves 2/3 of your retail coming through your physical stores and real life channels. So we work, as I mentioned, a lot with omni-channel retailers, and we're having a lot of new clients coming to us saying, you know, now my stores are shut, I've realized I have no interaction with my customer base or the bulk of my customer base. When they're not in the stores, I can't rely on my amazing store experience. I can't rely on, you know, new products bringing them in for footfall. I can't rely on my store staff for that kind of surprise and delight and building on service experience, especially when we're talking to more of our kind of fashion and department store type clients. So wanting to understand feeling that loyalty can be a really powerful tool to build on that opportunity of that new customer base and build that relationship and talk to them, as well as using loyalty to address that challenge of how can we start to build more meaningful engagement points with our customers when they're not making a purchase. How do we engage outside of that buying cycle? So I think from both the challenge and the opportunity side, we're seeing retail and other brands seeing loyalty as quite a key driver to the next year or two ahead. I think that was already happening pre-pandemic, but I think that, as everyone said, that digital transformation and awareness of data or lack of it has really kind of fast-tracked that from a more of a philosophical feeling of I want loyalty and brand loyalty and to engage with my customers, people actually saying, how do I make this real and how do we make it real in the next 6 months or 3 months or yesterday?
Yeah, thank you very much. And Dean, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. I think when we try to look at these problems in the context, we kind of want to look at it from both the customer perspective and the business perspective. So from the customer side, interestingly, I think we're seeing polarizing behaviors. On the one side, we're seeing sort of spontaneity. You know, people are desperate to get out and they're desperate to spend their money, and they go into the brands that they know and love. On the other side, though, I think that we're seeing greater contemplation. You know, it's an opportunity for customers to reconsider the supermarket that they go to. Are they getting the best value? Are they getting the best choice? Reconsidering fashion outlets that they might be going to, banks, you know, gyms, all this kind of stuff. They're reconsidering all of these things, and that's often leading to quite disloyal behaviours, right? What's interesting though is that we're seeing that particularly from the most loyal customers, the people that were previously most loyal. What we're also seeing, you know, whilst as marketeers we talk about creating frictionless experiences, that's what it's always been about. We're seeing customers wanting friction, you know, in what has been quite a sterile, frictionless 18 months or so. In fact, a recent customer experience report that we at MullenLowe published identified £15 billion worth of lost revenue due to poor customer experiences that brands are missing out on. We're seeing greater customer savviness, particularly from a kind of a data privacy perspective, and the media is clearly fueling a lot of this. The recent iOS 15 announcements, the recent message of ongoing delay to the cookieless world. Customers are increasingly understanding the value of their data, and the willingness, if you like, or not, to opt in unless it's really worth it. From the business side, we're seeing as corporate pressure is mounting, there's an even greater focus on short-term performance, short-term behaviors, driving short-term incrementality, often redistributing budgets and focusing on the here and now. We're also seeing, interestingly, as almost like an output of that, is a loss of knowledge. As people are moving, as corporations are restructuring, often we're finding, certainly from agencies, there is now a loss of knowledge within the businesses that once had as people are moving around. And then lastly, we're seeing a real accelerated investment in the thinking around first-party data and accelerated strategies, accelerated use of first-party data technologies, likes of CDPs that I'm sure a lot of us are very familiar with, and really thinking about how can we be smart about accessing and leveraging the value of first-party data and using own channels, as opposed to being more reliant upon paid media.
Thanks, Dean. Bring back the friction. So now we've set some context. What must brands consider in light of these changes in consumer behaviour? So I'm going to pose this question initially to Sheila.
First. I think what we strongly recommend is looking at your brand values and understanding how can that resonate with the kind of customer values that you have, and how can you bring that to life in your loyalty program. So, we've mentioned customers, businesses wanting to use loyalty to engage, and I think that's being really driven by customers. They expect, or they want, a sense of community, a sense of experience, a sense of true value add. They're very savvy and can see if it's basically a hidden sales tactic to get you onto the next purchase quicker than before. So I think looking at what are people, you're naturally loyal, you're kind of emotionally loyal customers, why are they coming to you? What is it about your brand that resonates with them, that they're enjoying, and how can that be fed into your loyalty program? And I think most people probably agree that that makes sense, but kind of example is always helpful. I think sometimes it can be easier said than done, depending on the business you're in and how much of a kind of brand you have to play with to make that come to life. So a couple of examples that from some of our clients in the last few months. One of our clients is Bergsey in Germany, who is an outdoor kind of clothing, apparel, hiking type of business. So, obviously customers, you can go online, search for your hiking boots, buy them at the cheapest price, get them delivered. It's about that kind of product and the right fit. So what can they do? Why do people come to them? So what is it that they see? Their customers, obviously, their values are being outdoors, going on their hikes, enjoying that motivation, that exercise, that kind of sense of adventure. So the loyalty program integrating with Strava, so they can reward their customers, not just for having purchased the product, but for actually using that product and for getting out and really engaging in their hobbies and their passions. So earning loyalty rewards because you've done your hike this weekend. We see other clients in a similar way using leaderboards as a really nice tactic to help create that sense of kind of community and interaction and engagement across loyalty. So looking at who's further up the leaderboard, obviously GDPR compliant and all that good stuff. So different ways that you can sense of kind of gamification into the use of the brand and the products that they're selling. We have a client, Brewdog, who most people in the UK anyway would know. I'm not sure about our US audience, but a really great beer brand over here. I'm not going to tell you what their program is because it's launching in the next week or two, but their brand, people aren't just going to respond to 10% off your 6-pack of beer. It's a brand that people love because it's hugely engaging. They're always coming up with great marketing campaigns. They've got new limited edition flavors coming out the whole time. They're really pushing their sustainability as a business. I think it's kind of carbon neutral, so you're doing good for the world by drinking beer. All of these elements that make people love and really feel warm about the brand. They kind of incorporating those into their loyalty concept. So hopefully when that launches the next week or two, you guys can see and hope see if you agree that it's kind of resonating and really building upon why customers are shopping with them. Maybe kind of a final example is, those are great when you've got brands and it's a hobby, it's hiking, it's drinking. Other businesses, especially some of our clients in more of the luxury or department store space, product is really a key driver of why people are shopping with them. So that still doesn't mean you're limited to just points on transactions or rewards on transactions, but creating and building upon that kind of brand aspiration, the value add, the sense of, those customers obviously value quality product, value exclusive product. So we work with Luisa Via Roma in Italy, who is an online, mainly online luxury fashion and homeware. They do a great, they get access to really great limited edition sneakers. So for their loyal customers, they created the Sneakers Club so people can be part of that, get early access to that product. So you're still building on your core proposition. It doesn't all have to be about what are your shoppers doing outside of your immediate shopping area, but how, they're getting early access, it's exclusive, they've got a countdown, they're getting more of what they need from Luisa Via Roma in a more kind of exciting way. So I think there's just a few examples where we recommend looking at what your brand values are, what those are, how those resonating with your customers, and how you bring that to life.
Thanks, Sheila. Some really great examples there. Thank you. And Michelle, over to you.
Well, in thinking about this question, I'm reflecting back on the poll we took at the beginning of this session. So, half of the respondents said that one of their priorities is acquiring new customers. 75% of the respondents said fostering brand loyalty with existing and lapsed customers is a priority. 50% said performing data analysis and extracting insights to understand changes in behavior, and only one person out of the group said they have no plans to evolve. So I want to know who that is. But when I think about those answers to the poll, there's really so much change that's occurred in consumer behavior that it's almost like starting over again. And I think there's three really important steps retailers and any brand, frankly, should consider right now to build or frankly rebuild loyalty in a post-pandemic world. And all of them have to do with getting to know your customers better and interacting with them in more relevant ways. And I think historically in retail, we've said, close enough is good enough when it comes to personalization. Nobody's harmed by getting an extra email or an extra coupon. But, there are other sectors like financial services and insurance where there's regulations that make it such that those brands have to get it more right. And so personalization it's like a charged word, and it has different meaning for different organizations. So the three things that I think brands should be thinking about are these. First, if you want to be personally relevant, you need to know who the customer is, and you need to be able to recognize them across all the touch points, interactions, and buyer journey stages. And that's where identity resolution and management are critically important. And with the pending demise of third-party cookies at some point in the future, whenever that's going to happen, it's going to become even more important. So it's important now, it's going to continue to be important. So a good place to spend some time and energy. The second is that once you know who that person is, it's important to know the right things about them. And that's where third-party data becomes important. So even through your loyalty program, where you're able to observe transactions and behaviors, that tells you one aspect of who that consumer is. You can append data to your known customer records to build greater customer intelligence, and all within the rails of consumer privacy, data ethics, and data governance. In fact, consumers value that. They want you to kind of recognize them for who they are. And then the third is, so if you're able to identify the person across all their interactions, you're able to know the right things about them, then the third thing to do is to engage in a more personally and contextually relevant way. And that includes all your communications and interactions across your web experience, your app, your customer service center, even your loyalty program benefit structure. One size simply doesn't fit all. And today, people really want benefits for their loyalty programs to be customizable, and they want brands to engage with them as an individual. I refer to this really as a kind of show me, you know me. If I'm a loyal brand customer, I want you to respect my choices and my preferences. And I'm not talking about old school preference center stuff like send me email versus send me a catalog. Now I'm talking about know me in a way that benefits me significantly. And when brands do that, you're going to reduce waste, you're going to increase your accuracy, and you're going to delight your customers in better ways.
Hey, Michelle, I've got a question for you, if I'm allowed to, Lisa, if I'm allowed to ask a question. Thank you. I imagine there's a lot of people that are listening in that are wanting to build new loyalty programs. And as we all know, that often involves large investments, which often then requires organizational alignments, approvals across the verticals. What strategies have you found successful, Michelle, to help make those changes?
Yeah, Dean, it's a great question. We typically start with building out the financial business case for change. If it doesn't work in the mathematics, it's never going to work in real life. And so you start with the math, and we've built a number of ROI calculators for this purpose. And what I've found is that just a few points improvement in some of the key metrics makes a huge difference at scale. And so when you're armed with those facts, and my suggestion is always, if you're building an ROI model to justify a major investment, get your finance group involved in it, right? When your finance team, blesses the numbers that you've got in your ROI calculator, it goes a long way to helping add credibility to your numbers and helping you make a case in the way that business executives make decisions. So that's what I would offer. Start with the math.
That's great. Thanks.
Thanks, Michelle. Dean, sorry, would you like to answer the question on what brands must consider in light of these changes?
Sure. I mean, when I'm last, it's always the hardest part, but I'll give it a go, Lisa. Look, as marketers, we talk a lot about CRM, customer relationship marketing, particularly within the world of loyalty. Our feeling is about putting that R of CRM back into CRM, the relationship. We really need to think as marketeers how to build relationships, how to rebuild disenfranchised relationships, how to rebuild lost relationships, really thinking about how to create genuine empathy into our communications beyond the automation that all of the tech provides us today. And customers see past that. We should start by speaking to our customers, truly understanding what our customers want from us. And that really does mean not just doing the tactical reviews that are quite, are quite good, but the trouble with those is often they're just helping us build our SEO and build our NPS, really find ways to speak to and understand our customers. Then we can start to build customer value propositions, creating opportunities for our customers to provide us their data in exchange for great experiences. They're only going to do that if they really feel like they're going to get value. So we have to ask ourselves, what's truly going to entice our customers to share their data? We talk a lot about worrying less about the long term, which might seem slightly counterintuitive when we're thinking about loyalty. But as important as that is, we really must also think about the here and now. How do we create the best experience for our customers right now? The Amazons of this world have really shown us the importance of focus on your immediate customer needs. How can we improve that online experience? How can we react super quickly if we can see through the data, through the analytics, through our customers' feedback, that there's been a poor experience? How can we show that genuine empathy? And then lastly, I think we need to think about understanding the gaps, if you like, within the data, within the tech ecosystem, to deliver that relationship that we talk about. We can't just be seduced, as valuable as a lot of the tech and certainly the marketing technologies that we have today that we all use with value. We don't just want to be seduced by what they can give. We really need to, start small, learn fast, always be prepared to move and pivot without being too worried about making change.
Yeah, some really good actions there. Thank you, Dean. I think definitely going to steal that, put the R back in CRM. Love that. So Dean, I'm going to go back to you first because I did you last time. So what are the kind of essential actions and next steps that brands can make now to make sure they kind of thrive, but not just survive?
Sure. We often really like to start with our clients with a customer audit, particularly in light of the changing behaviours over the last year and a half or so. Really getting under the skin of our customers, the movement of customers and customer segments, and then qualify that, like I said, by speaking to our customers. Why are our customers leaving? Why are they staying together? We then need to really focus on first-party data. Let's find new ways to really build our first-party data, not just in volume, but like I said, in richness and depth. Really understand attitudes, understand motivations, understand behaviors at an individual level. Then we can start to build these customer value propositions, truly understand customer behaviors, and then we can respond to each one in an empathetic way. We need to create experiences and reward our customers for something today. Let's not just focus on long-term behaviors. I'm a big fan of a specs company called Qubits. They're a British brand. They sent me an email last week inviting me to collect this little free gift, a cleaning cloth designed by some sort of local artist. So of course I went down to the shop to collect my little free gift, and great customer experience. I was easily seduced in buying a new pair of glasses, as we can see it today. That little thoughtful gift, in that example, definitely paid off, and it's definitely going to earn them my loyalty.
They look great on you. Michelle, would you like to go next?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm struck by Dean's example for eyeglasses. I did some customer experience work a number of years with a major glasses manufacturer and retailer. And what we found when we looked at the customer experience is that the customer experience was completely broken up or siloed based on who owned which stage in the buyer journey. So the advertising team owned the customer experience up to and including all the signage on the exterior of the store. Once you open the door and walk through the vestibule, the customer experience is owned by store operations. When you bought something, your experience was owned by the CRM team, and then the digital team was in complete parallel. And what would happen is people would come in and they'd look for their glasses, they wouldn't find them right away. They'd go online later and try to find them. And even the skewing system, the numbering system for the glasses were different between the website and the store. So even if you could find what you wanted on the website, you couldn't find those glasses again in the store. So the customer experience is really fractionalized. And so I think that consistent with some of the other comments I've already made in this discussion, I think there's never been a better time to know everything you can about your customers, and that's across the entirety of the customer journey or the buyer experience. It's before somebody purchases, at point of sale, and post sale. And to do that, there are three things that every brand really needs to do right now. The first is to shore up your identity program. And you've got to be able to recognize that it's the same person across all the places they interact with your brand. And not to mention, you'll need it when third-party cookies go away, but that's sometime in the future. This is a here and now. You've got to get your identity right. The second is to enhance your customer records with the right data. Third-party data can help you build deeper intelligence and know the consumer's context. And that context is critical, right? So put yourself in the consumer's shoes and make that moment when your brand and the consumer meet more meaningful to the consumer. And then the third is to really think about updating and modernizing your loyalty program. I mean, now is the perfect time for a reset. Consumers know that the world changed. They changed for them personally, and they know that the world's changed for businesses. So now is the time to do rapid experimentation and prototyping and learn your way through, with the customer's help, the things that matter to them, are compelling to them, and will help them engender and rebuild loyalty with your brand.
Thank you, Michelle. And finally, Sheila.
Yeah, I mean, strongly agree with both Dean and Michelle. It's about knowing your customers, and you can never know your customers too well. You can never have too much information from them. I think, kind of practically speaking, a couple of things, we still see a surprising amount of businesses where they're still siloed between the kind of loyalty data and the broader customer data and the CRM. And, people have been tackling that problem for a long time. But I think, with the more newer technologies out there, I think breaking down those silos and having true kind of real-time integration and data flowing across the business as it's needed to then action that data, because you can have all the data in the world, but obviously, as we all know, if you can't action it, then it's a complete missed opportunity. So I think, you know, the kind of bigger piece, that's a strong recommendation for us, is making sure that loyalty is one element of data and one mechanic that's feeding through a really holistic kind of customer strategy, and that it's all playing together, and customers don't get my email today with my loyalty points or balance and then a totally separate email half an hour later on something different. So strong kind of tie-up of that seamless kind of communication and interaction. I think maybe in the more short-term thing I would say was to challenge yourselves to look at your loyalty proposition, either one you've got or one you're building, and think, what am I really bringing to the business? What am I going to learn about my customers from the way I've designed this program that we wouldn't know without it? So that's more than just, well, we're tracking online, tracking in-store purchases, which we weren't before. Obviously, that's really valuable. But I mean, more of the kind of empathy and value-related information and their preferences that we've been talking about today. You know, what can you look to add into your loyalty program? It doesn't have to cost the earth, it doesn't need a whole IT project, but some new reward, some new mechanic, some new engagement point that means you're starting to bring in additional data that you wouldn't otherwise have had. Because I think that's where the real power of a more modern loyalty program is, that it's not just a means to harness transactional data, but as we've talked about, having that kind of real relationship, you know, using it to incentivize customers to share information on themselves, complete their skin type profile if you're a beauty customer, or watch some of the content that you've created and give some response to it. You know, you can, which do you like, this product more or that kind of product more? You know, there's a lot that you can do with a really engaging front end and a large program to kind of incentivize customers to share that data in a way that values them as well. So I would kind of ask people to challenge themselves to see how much of that they're really delivering with their loyalty program.
Brilliant. Thank you very much to you all for those fantastic actions. So we're now going to move across to our Q&A. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask the panelists, don't forget to put them in the Q&A box. But we've had a few that have come through. So I'm going to direct the questions, but panelists, if you want to chime in at any point, please, feel free to do so once the other person's finished. So I'm going to pose this first question to Michelle. With the recent news that Google is delaying the removal of third-party cookies, what are steps a brand should be taking now?
I love this question. So, you know, when third-party cookies go away at some point in the future, the digital advertising ecosystem will change substantially in terms of targeting, personalization, retargeting, and measurement. And the walled gardens will have all the power unless you make some changes to the way you collect and curate your first-party data through authenticated interactions, through the normal transactional data that you collect, and through your loyalty program. And I love some of the comments that Dean made about giving the consumer reasons to provide information about themselves. So that value exchange is critically important. You know, and at Acxiom, we're working with brands now to prepare for third-party cookie demise whenever it happens by looking at your first-party data strategy and preparedness. So are you collecting and curating the right information right now about consumers? What do you need to know? And I loved Sheila's comments about making sure that your loyalty value proposition helps you collect information from and about the consumer that matters to the consumer, and you couldn't collect any other way. I also think brands need to be actively assessing the strength of their identity spine. Identity is critical to what's about to happen, you know, in a year or so with the cookie demise. And at this point, we're firm proponents of a hybrid approach, which leverages walled gardens and your first-party cookies. So when third-party cookies go away, you still have first-party cookies. Those are things you own, and it puts the power back in the hands of the brand when you're using those first-party cookies in the right way. So I think the first step in that process is to reinforce your identity resolution and management program, and then look at the first-party data you're collecting now, and identify the gaps and opportunities to deepen your understanding of the customer through that value exchange, where the consumer understands why it's important for them to provide information and they see the benefit in the way you interact with them.
Thank you, Michelle. Great answer. And I've got another question that's come through. This one I'm going to pose to Sheila, if that's okay. We are using a custom built platform for a pilot loyalty program. Any recommendations for out of the box solutions?
I feel like this might be someone from my company joking and planting a question. Yes, Antavo, we're an out-the-box loyalty platform, and I think we come across that challenge a lot, not just with pilots, but businesses that kind of created their own loyalty functionality of some way in-house. People, I think, can often underestimate some of the complexity, especially of what you might want to deliver as you're innovating and creating a more modern loyalty engine. So often IT departments will be, we can do that. We can allocate some points or target some rewards. We have, SaaS platforms. So we're kind of an out-the-box modular system, and there are quite a few out there on the market. I won't just say us, but so yeah, there are definitely some options that are worth looking at that can give you really fast time to market, reduce the kind of IT investments on your side, make it more flexible and easy for you as a marketer to kind of constantly evolve and change the program. So it's not just build what we want today and then be stuck with it for 2 years until we can get IT resource to build the next part. So yeah, I would definitely do a bit of research on kind of SaaS loyalty platforms, and there'll be quite a few, that a couple that might come up, but Antavo should be number one to look at.
Of course, of course. Thank you, Sheila. The next question, Dean, I will pose to you. So given the amount of changes in consumer behaviour last year and some declines in overall loyalty, what types of data can be used to help understand which consumers are ready to rejoin the economy and spend more?
That's a good question. I think before we sort of think about the data itself, I think what's really interesting is to understand changing patterns in the data. That's almost more interesting, I think, particularly as we're hopefully sort of exiting the pandemic, and we can start to understand people's changes of behavior. Let's look at people that perhaps once were loyal. Obviously, everyone's taken a bit of a dip generally, and then we can start to see changing patterns of engagement as people are starting to exit. Are those the same people that previously were loyal, or are we starting to see new people that are becoming more interested in the brand, that sort of thing? Now, of course, we've got other digital signals that we can look at. We can look at website engagement. We can look at the correlations between website engagement, email engagement, and purchase. You know, sometimes we need to sort of expand out beyond just looking at one thing. It's the kind of the combination of these things. We work a lot with geolocational data. I find that really, really interesting, particularly for insights. You know, there's limitations to what we can do with targeting, but we can understand people's physical movements, you know, with that technology and that sort of thing. We can see where people are, and as people are coming closer towards physical stores, moving towards competitor stores, that sort of thing. So those are other kind of signals that might start to indicate people's appetite to re-engage.
Yeah, I'd like to add a couple of thoughts to that. I agree with you, Dean, completely. You know, I think part of this question, you know, is really on, it depends on which customers you want to learn more about. You know, so many brands generated new customers via e-commerce last year, millions and millions of customers that you really don't know very much about yet because they're new to your brand in an authenticated way. And at Acxiom, we have thousands of data elements and propensity models, which can be appended to those records so you can know more about them right now, you know, learn more about them more quickly so that you can make smarter choices about how to support them in their purchase path and really create a long-term relationship. That said, some of those new to e-commerce customers may have been traditional in-store customers. You're just seeing them in an authenticated way for the first time. So they may have been in your stores using cash and not part of your loyalty program. Another example I can think of is that many people simply stopped buying at your store or perhaps even in your category last year, you know, because people were not going on vacations, they weren't buying luggage and bathing suits and whatever else goes along with travel. And we've done some attitudinal research that we include in our models and segmentation schemes to help brands understand which consumers are really more ready and willing than others to return to more traditional shopping patterns. You know, we're not going to go back to pre-pandemic, but there are, you know, RFM patterns that make a difference in the business. I could share lots of other examples, but you get the idea that better data makes everything better. And so what what that means for your brand and your customer experience that you're trying to deliver is going to be different from brand to brand. Every brand has to look at this within the context of the value proposition they offer customers and what consumers expect or want from the brand themselves.
Thank you, Michelle. One last question, which I'm going to ask Sheila. What are some ideas for how to customize a loyalty program at the individual level?
I think a few things, but it depends on, again, back to the point about data and how that's flowing and how well you already know the customers to then try and customize the experience, personalize the experience that they're getting. So, if you are using that kind of data that Michelle's been talking about, or you've got your own segmentation models and you've got those insights, then, using those to align the kind of rewards or benefits that you want to give to your customers. As a starting point, personalization through choice can be a way to go if you're kind of lacking in some of that data and insights. Offering people different rewards to choose from and seeing what they're selecting and starting to use that data then to kind of learn some preferences, see which rewards are being offered better or being better received. So I think some simple ways, but it's really down to the data that you've got, and obviously having a loyalty program captures that data so you can start harnessing and looking at it. But I think other ways, there are still some simple, maybe not so much personalized, but more targeted ways with the things of like having a tier structure. It's a very traditional loyalty approach, but it's a reason that it does actually work because you're investing your money in the right levels of customers, but also customers have a differentiated experience as they move through those tiers. It's becoming more personalized and they're unlocking different behaviors. So I think just a couple of thoughts as some simple starting points on that.
Thank you.
I think I'd perhaps build on that as well, and to say that I think it's also about being as open and transparent through it as possible. Customers partly understand what all of this is about, but if we can ask questions to our customers and say, well, listen, what would you like more of? What would you like less of? Let us curate the right sort of content for you. Are you more interested in experiences or more interested in offers? What types of content are you going to be more keen to see? And then create the language so that it's clear that there's a dialogue, there's a relationship in all of this, and I think that can help to encourage people to be more open with their data.
Yeah, and I would just add to this as well. So in addition to these great thoughts from Sheila and Dean, I mean, let's face it, in the last 18 months, consumers have not been able to earn and burn loyalty rewards in the same ways and at the same velocity they did pre-COVID, right? So in the beginning of the pandemic, where there were shortages of basic necessities like paper towels and toilet paper and all that kind of stuff. And, me, I was a loyal, I still am a loyal Bounty paper towel customer. But when I went into the store and there were no paper towels of any brand I could recognize, I bought what was ever available on the shelf. And over time, people got used to the fact that, maybe that brand isn't as important as I thought it was, because functionally, the replacement product still did the job. Now, I promise you that as soon as Bounty showed up on my shelves again, I was buying it. I am a brand loyalist through and through. But I think when you think through that story, it really is clear that some consumers will kind of look at loyalty as something that they're not willing to give for a while. So I think brands need to really think about how what they need to do differently to make that loyalty value proposition meaningful to the consumer. And we all know that loyalty programs started 100 years ago, and the purpose was to connect a consumer to a transaction, right? That was, and brands were willing to invest in some infrastructure and give away some margin in order to know that, to be able to understand who best customers were. Well, 100 years later, most loyalty programs are still operating in that same model. So, my call to the industry, to anybody listening out there, is it's time to rethink loyalty through the lens of a consumer that wants a really different experience. They want a relationship. I love put the R back in CRM. They want a relationship with some brands and not so much with others. And what you want to do is earn your rightful place as the brand the consumer wants a relationship with.
Great note to end on there. Thank you, Michelle. So that finishes up our Q&A. I just want to say a massive thank you to all our panelists, Sheila from Antavo, Michelle from Acxiom, and Dean from MullenLowe. And thank you to our attendees for joining us today. We've recorded the webinar, and the recording will be made available on the Acxiom website, and will also be sent to you via email. For those that still have any questions to ask, please feel free to send them through. And if there were any questions that came through right at the end and I've missed it, apologies, we will make sure that we follow up with you directly afterwards. So thank you to everyone for joining, and thank you to our panelists. A really great session.